Hello, everybody. I am Kimberly McIntyre, nutritional wellness coach, and I have the privilege of sitting here today with Skye Chilton, who is the owner of Real Mushrooms. And so today we're going to be talking about some real mushrooms. He is the chief mushroom fungi. I'm not really sure if that's about the fungi or he's a fun guy, but maybe we're about to find out. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him. Hey, Skye, thank you so much for taking the time to actually sit down with me. I appreciate it. We need to share this information with the world. But first, I would like for you to have the viewers be able to know a little bit more about you, how you got your start in this, what's going on.
Sure. Thanks, Kimberly. Glad to be here. So it really all started with my father. So my father is Jeff Chilton. He is the founder of Namex. Namex is one of the leading suppliers of organic mushroom extract ingredients, mostly as a B2B wholesaler to other brands that use them in a variety of different products. But he actually grew up and started working out of university on a big mushroom farm. Most people don't enjoy working on mushroom farms because it's very kind of like steamy grow houses. You're working with compost a lot. But for whatever reason, he really liked it and enjoyed it and worked his way up to manager there. And they sent him over to the Netherlands to learn some of their growing techniques. This was all primarily for the button mushroom. So the one that we all see in the grocery stores. And then at this farm, they actually had a Japanese scientist on staff where he was experimenting with other culinary mushrooms that he was familiar with in Japan. So they were one of the first places, this was in Washington State, to grow shiitake mushroom, enoki mushroom, and they brought shiitake to market. This was in the mid 70s. And it completely failed. Nobody wanted to eat shiitake mushroom at the time, but it really exposed my dad to mushrooms beyond just the button mushroom that we're all familiar with. So that eventually took him to Asia, and particularly China, where they have a really big history of mushroom consumption and mushroom growing. So the first country to start growing mushrooms about 800 years ago. You've got dedicated research institutes in China that are all dedicated to mushrooms. It's a very big part of their culture with traditional Chinese medicine. So he started going through all these conferences, learning more, talking with different growers and things like that. And in the mid 90s, he ended up bringing the first organic certifiers over to China to help set up the first organic growers. And this is a pretty important thing with mushroom growing. So we'll get into more of that, I'm sure, later on when we talk about where the majority of these mushrooms come from. But organic certification is a big deal. And so obviously me growing up, I was involved in the business, helping out here and there, whether it's like helping to fulfill orders or answer letters at the time that were actually coming into the business in the 90s and things. But I didn't really picture myself as a sort of mushroom fun guy or anything like that. Coming out of high school or university, like my background is in computer science and math, and I'm more of like a science nerd. But I kind of did a big 180, I guess, on my health in kind of the mid 2000s, 2010, and started to connect with my dad and learn more about his business because he's, been in the industry for over 40 years. And kind of figuring out that like, hey, there's a really big gap in the mushroom industry in terms of knowledge, understanding, really kind of educating, whether it's like practitioners, consumers, influencers, of how these mushrooms get grown, how they get processed, what are the different plant parts of these fungi. So you have the mushroom, which is also called the fruiting body. You've got mycelium, which is also known as the vegetative body. Then there's spores, which are kind of treated as the seed for these fungi. And any of these different parts can get used in final products that we end up consuming. So it's really important to know what these different plant parts are. Like, any way you can get, I'd say, more mushrooms into your diet is bonus.
I looked on the label and I think it says grams, but I think that's about a teaspoon.
Yeah. So we'd normally kind of like have a wellness doses of around 1 gram, 1 gram serving. This will typically get scaled up or down with like a practitioner dosing, depending on what they're trying to help with for their patients. So it can be either like a half teaspoon of our powders or 2 capsules is usually like a 1 gram serving. And you can kind of scale this to fit your needs. You can kind of mix and match different mushrooms. You can scale some back. Kind of really, we just want to let people pick and choose however they want to add it to their daily wellness routine. So if capsules are easier for you to take because you already have other capsule products, that's great. Just add a couple more capsules in. If you like to kind of do a kind of coffee blended mixture, it's really easy to add them into coffee. If you do smoothies, that kind of thing, you can add them into smoothies. There's a bunch of different ways you can get more mushrooms into your diet. Certainly just eat them as a food now that a lot more grocery stores are carrying more than just the button mushrooms. Button mushrooms are pretty boring and don't really have a lot of flavor if you compare them to, say, like shiitake, maitake, oyster mushroom, lion's mane. So any way you can get more mushrooms into your diet.
So I'm sitting here right now actually with my coffee.
There we go.
And I have lion's mane in here right now, but I have mixed it up. I did the 5 Defenders and I just thought I would try it, but I have lion's mane, I have chaga, I have cordyceps, and the only reason why I didn't order the turkey tail is because it is in here, correct?
Yep.
It's in here. And then I also thought this was pretty cool.
It's really good.
Bar. So some people are going to be getting this for Christmas.
Definitely. I've already got a few packages going out to friends and family.
It's so great. And okay, so what some people are going to want to know, it's okay that this is hot. It's still effective, correct? So
correct. So just to kind of give you the full sort of flow on how the processing works is, so we grow mushrooms all on very small farms. So just so everyone's aware, this is over in China, and we can talk about kind of the economics of mushroom growing here. All on organic farms. They get dried, they get taken to state-of-the-art organic processing facilities where we basically grind them into a fine powder. We'll then cook them in hot water. Depending on the extract, we have different specifications. We may use alcohol with that. And so with the hot water extraction, so think of it as like making a bone broth or like a vegetable stock or something like that, where we're just cooking these in a big tank of water. We're trying to break down the fibers in these mushrooms. So the cell walls of fungi are actually made from chitin. So this is the same stuff that crab shells are made from. So it's very hard.
Wow.
And tough. And so that hot water extraction will then start to break down that chitin, and most of these beneficial compounds that can help support our immune system are inside the cell wall. So the hot water extraction will help break it down. Then we'll take this extract liquid, we'll concentrate it, and then we'll basically evaporate out all the moisture, which then you're left with an extract powder. And because it's already gone through this heat extraction, adding it to anything hot at that point it's not going to change the substance of it at all.
The availability.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a gingerbread getting ready to go in the oven, and I went ahead and threw lion's mane in there.
Yeah, so we've got a ton of different recipes on our website, whether it's like cookies or like desserts, drinks, all kinds of different things.
And I saw that now you came out with a hot chocolate.
Yes, it is really tasty. Yeah, I finally just got a couple of our new batches. We just got our unsweetened version in, which a lot of people are asking for. The regular version, we tried to keep a pretty low amount of sugar in that. I generally don't like to consume a whole lot of sugar, so it's nice. The unsweetened one is really good too. I've kind of just been playing around with the unsweetened at the moment, and you can just take that as a regular hot chocolate. You can add it to your coffee if you like having a mocha.
I'm into that. What all do you put in your coffee? You just put the mushrooms and coffee?
I usually add some like fats in there. So whether it's like a coconut or MCT oil, maybe some grass-fed butter, and then kind of blend that up and just kind of have a rich caffeinated beverage in the morning just to kickstart my day.
Yep. Same. Good for your brain. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been doing that for a long time, and just kind of, it's part of the routine now.
I've probably been doing it about 8 months.
Okay.
Literally. Yeah. And I also throw in some collagen because I need it for my skin. Mm-hmm. I I think your story, I love your story. I love the story, with your dad and you working with him. And even when you said, steamy environment working in compost, and I'm like, that's kind of appealing to me. I like that environment, so I can see the pull there. But I just think it's really cool, and the amount of education here it blows my mind. Like we could literally probably talk for 5 hours, but we won't do that because there's so much going on here. There's so many different components. So okay, the difference between the mushrooms and the mycelium.
Yeah, the mycelium. So mycelium. So yeah, think of the mycelium as like the root system. So when these mushrooms are out in nature, pretty much, there'll be mycelium pretty much all around us. It's going to be in your grass, underneath the ground there. It like helps to break down organic matter. It can even help to feed different organisms, whether they've shown how it can like help bring nutrients to trees. But basically this is kind of the body of these fungal organisms. So they'll be out collecting nutrients. And then once the environmental conditions are correct with say like temperature, humidity, lots of the time this is in the fall, but then it will produce what we know as a mushroom. So the mushroom can also be referred to as the fruiting body or fruit body. And then once the mushrooms are fully mature, they will release spores. Spores are all around us in a day to day. We can't see them, but they're everywhere. And these are like the seeds for mushrooms, and the spores will fall down somewhere. And if they get the right conditions, I don't think it's germinate, but they kind of break up and they'll form hyphae, which are very small filaments. And these hyphae form into mycelium, and then they can spread the organism around. But the mycelium is kind of all the way out there in nature. And this is really important when we talk about products, because typically you can have mushroom products, you can have mycelium products, you can have spore products. Spores products aren't really as common in North America compared to say Asia, but most of the stuff in the North American market is either mushroom or mycelium, but it all kind of gets lumped into the mushroom category. So that's when you're out looking at products, it's really important to look at the labels and see exactly what they're made of. And so with typically we recommend going for mushroom extracts. So we talked about extraction, kind of breaking down the mushroom and putting it into a more bioavailable form. Whereas with mycelium is typically grown in North America. It can typically be marketed as US grown. It may sound like it could be mushrooms, but what they do is they take the root system. So they take mycelium, they put it on a sterile grain. So this is kind of how you eventually grow mushrooms, is you inoculate sterile grain with mycelium. The mycelium grows out on the grain. It turns into kind of like a white grain log. If you're familiar with tempeh is cooked soybeans where they put a fungus on it and it turns into a white cake. Very similar to this. And before mushrooms will grow, so normally you could then take that out, add that to sawdust and start to grow mushrooms. They'll basically harvest that. So this sort of white grain cake, they'll dry it, they'll powder that, they'll sell that as a mushroom supplement. When there's no mushrooms present, it's just the mycelium and the grain substrate because the grain hasn't been fully digested. So back in 2015, my dad went out and started testing a whole lot of different products because he had his own assumptions. And what he found was that, the mycelium is not fully digesting this grain substrate. And so a lot of what some of these products are is just the grain itself. So we found very high levels of starch, which just means the grain isn't fully digested. And then, so the mushrooms and the myceliums both contain what are called beta glucans, and they're complex polysaccharides. And so when we look at sort of what the active compounds that the research says a lot of these benefits come from, say like benefiting our immune system, a lot of that is centered around these beta glucans. And so we also measure beta glucans in all of our products and look at that. And typically with these myceliated grain products, we see very low levels of beta glucans. And that's basically another indicator that there's just a very little amount of mycelium present. So it's really important when you're looking at products is to like scrutinize the label really close, look at the supplements facts panel. Sometimes it's hidden, sometimes it's not even disclosed on how things are grown. So you really have to ask a lot of questions, and it can be difficult, and it definitely infuriates me at times. But It's common with a lot of different supplements, but certainly like, yeah, the mushroom category has its own issues as well.
I think we have the answer because we can just buy real mushrooms and we don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah, it's true. And so just going back with our mushrooms, so yes, they're all organically grown in China. We definitely do a whole lot of testing around that to make sure that they're tested for microbiological contamination, heavy metals, pesticides. So we do testing in China, then we bring them over to the US, we test them all again, and then we have finished product testing that we go through as well. So we do a ton of testing just to make sure everything is safe. And they're fully good to consume. And so we're also measuring those beta glucans as well. So that's kind of one of the things you can look at in products is like, does it actually guarantee you beta glucan levels on the product? So most of what, these mushrooms contain are these beta glucan compounds. This is really what we want to be spending our money on. There is other abstract compounds too, once you start to dive into the details, whether it's like reishi triterpenes, which kind of give reishi its bitterness. You have like cordycepin and cordyceps. So there's kind of these secondary metabolites that you can look at as well. But the primary compound that is there in the most abundance is typically these beta glucan compounds. And so making sure that we guarantee that to all of our customers is really important to us, and just kind of showcasing that, these are the main ingredients here in these mushrooms. There's certainly other nutrients, but we can measure this one sort of key indicator and use that as a quality metric on all our products.
Well, what's really exciting is that we know that there has been testing done and it's tried and true. Mm-hmm. A lot of these terms are very foreign to so many people that are hearing this right now. And so maybe if we could just kind of break it down, like what is the reason why somebody needs this in their life?
Sure. So mushrooms are considered adaptogens. And so adaptogens can be a variety of things, but most of the time it's allowing us to adapt to different stressors. And so there's a lot of stressors that we're dealing with in our daily lives, whether it's work, whether it's, environmental stressors like pollution. I kind of talk about mushrooms as being they're immunomodulators too. So they help to modulate our immune system and kind of just keep us in balance. So I'll explain it as if we say we have a cold, and typically that means our immune system is suppressed. Functional mushrooms can help to kind of raise our immune system back up and stimulate it and kind of bring it back into balance. The flip side is also true. So say you have, seasonal allergies, which is an overstimulation of the immune system. Functional mushrooms can help to bring that back down. And so it's a lot about balance. And that's kind of what adaptogens are, is helping us to adapt to everyday stressors in life.
What would be a good one to help with brain function?
Yeah, so lion's mane has definitely been talked about extensively with brain health and sort of cognitive function. There's a couple clinical trials out of Japan that showed help with depression and anxiety. A few others helped with improved cognitive scores. This was typically in elderly individuals, but they do have specific compounds in there that can help stimulate nerve growth factor. And then nerve growth factor can help your brain and your body regrow certain neurons in the brain. So there's promise at the moment, and certainly there's enough consumption evidence out there with mushrooms that there's no real downside to consuming more mushrooms in your diet, and definitely a lot of upside potential, I would say. All right.
The chaga right here, digestive health. So let's talk about that, because that's my niche as a health coach. I do the entire lifestyle, but really honing in on that digestive health, because if your gut isn't healthy, then nothing else is. And so I think it's a great place to start. So tell me what you guys have seen with the chaga and the digestive health.
So chaga has been traditionally used as digestive tonic to help with digestion. Actually, in traditional Chinese medicine, they use lion's mane more for digestion too, which is quite interesting. One of the main products in China is actually a digestive cookie that contains lion's mane.
That recipe.
So yeah. And yeah, chaga is really interesting because it's not a mushroom in what we're familiar with. So it's actually more like a burl, if you're familiar with burls on the side of trees. So it's like a woody canker that grows primarily on birch trees. So it can also help your skin. There's some data on chaga for psoriasis. So it's definitely, I would say, something that can help with digestion, also skin health. And it does contain a lot of antioxidants. And so,
is that in the five defenders? Yes.
yeah. So with the five defenders, we've kind of picked the top immune system boosting mushrooms. So chaga, reishi, shiitake, maitake, and turkey tail.
Okay. Apparently I need to be taking a little bit more of that right now to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I remembered my question that I totally blanked out on. If I wanted to up my dose, can I? I mean, is it okay? Is it safe for, if I wanted to put a tablespoon in?
Yeah, definitely. So mushrooms are mostly regarded as safe. So I think there's certainly people who can have, I would say, allergic type reactions. It's a very small percentage. If you're allergic to consuming mushrooms normally, definitely tread carefully. But it would mostly be kind of side effects. You could have some kind of like upset stomach, but certainly it's safe on upper dosage of 5 to 10 grams easily.
Okay.
I would say just like scale slowly, see how your body feels.
I love trying these new ones, and I actually crave it in my coffee now. I love the flavor. It's, I don't know, maybe I'm different, but I love the flavor that it brings to it. But I actually did sell it to a client that she's like, she feels the same way. So it's not just me, but I highly recommend that people try it in their coffee. Just like you said, it helps with that routine, and there it is. And put it in there every day. You won't forget. Do you mind just for a minute going back to, you had a health issue or something, and this, how did this help you? What about whatever you're willing to talk about with that, just so we kind of hear your own personal story?
Sure. Yeah. Like I was saying, I guess it's been about at least a decade ago. I was, working in an office environment, kind of doing the typical 9 to 5, eating out at restaurants every day, not the best routine, and just started just reviewing my own health. That was kind of like diet, exercise. I had been a university athlete, so I was used to training a lot, and that kind of just, I didn't really have a reason to do that anymore once I was at a university, and so it was kind of pretty easy to get lazy and not want to exercise or eat well, and so just kind of started to overhaul my diet a lot and just eat better, exercise more, like cut out processed foods, cut out sugar for the most part, eat way more vegetables. And then part of that kind of just led me to like, hey, like my dad's been doing this mushroom thing for 3 decades. Let's hear a little bit more about this. Certainly I enjoyed eating mushrooms all the time and foraging for mushrooms, but it was not really a part of my routine at the time. And so just kind of learning his history a lot more. I don't know. Lots of people right now are getting sick. And so I've been pretty clear for the most part. And, it's tough when, I'm sure it's true in a lot of cases, but with preventative measures, it's tough to really know, right? It's like, okay, I haven't, just as an example, I haven't been sick for a year. Was it the mushrooms? I don't know.
Right.
It's kind of, was it good sleep? Was it good sleep? Was it low stress? Was it exercise? Was it a good diet? There's all of these different pieces that play into that. And I'd say mushrooms are just, one other little pillar there, as part of like a healthy routine. So yeah, just a small piece. But it's a pretty easy thing to add into your routine. And I think it definitely can play a big role.
Yes. Well, to all of those questions, I would say yes, it's all of those things. And, it's nice to have all those components together. And just like you, even though I'm sitting here with this weird dry cough, but other than that, I rarely ever get sick, and people get sick all around me. And I sail right through, which is wonderful. But I do think it's all of those components. But here mushrooms are on board. And so I think that's part of that, building your immune system and helping it stay strong as well. So it's always nice to just add those little things in. It's no big deal. Little here, little there.
Yeah. And I think part of what I've seen coming out of the craziness of the last couple of years here is that just people taking their health into their hands a little bit more, and really, okay, I need to like stay healthy myself. And so getting into more of a wellness routine, no matter what it contains, whether it's all the different things, because there's so many components of that, of exercise, stress, diet, low stress environments, and all the pieces that come together in that. And so I think, it's been good to see an uptick in this trend of just overall health, coming out of this madness, and then mushrooms kind of being a part of that in this whole piece here.
Yeah. Well, like I was telling you before we got on camera, I had my own story, and I had a period of time where I was really dealing with a lot of anxiety, and almost to the point of having panic attacks. And I walked into this place, they had it said on the bottle, anxiety, it was mushrooms, and I started using them. And honestly, when I ran out of them, that is when I started doing research and stumbled onto your company. And so I got Real Mushrooms in, and I was taking the 5 Defenders. And I'm not saying I don't ever have anxiety, but it would just be something normal. 0% panic attacks. All of that has gone away. And I even, like, a situation will hit me, and then later I'll think about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like a couple of years ago, this would have taken me out, and I didn't, I wasn't even affected. So I do believe it was a component. I did make a lot of changes, but definitely a component, which is exciting that I am here, and that is gone. So
that's amazing.
that is one of the reasons why I really wanted people to hear this. And what a better way than to actually hear it from you, because these are things that can really make a difference. And then to know that the real mushroom is the real deal, and that you've just done it right. And so we don't have to worry about it, and knowing that it's tested before, during, and we've got an excellent product. So
yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy, and just for everyone to be able to hear this, and learn about adaptogens, what they are. And
it's separate from plants. It's separate from animals. It's its own kingdom. And, it really should be a part of our diets in whatever form that takes.
Absolutely. Well, my next venture is, how easy is it? I make smoothies all the time, and I can just throw it in your smoothie, and then you won't even taste it at all.
Yeah.
I actually prefer that over a supplement. It's just one more thing, to take, and super easy. You can really just set your bag up beside your blender so that next time you make it, you don't forget.
That's a great idea.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. People are going to really appreciate all of this valuable information. And thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a great day.
Great. Thanks, Kim.